Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
In the city of Yoru, the streets were bustling as a carriage could be seen entering through the front gates. A few people passing by were a little curious as to what's inside the carriage, but didn't spare them much thought since there were plenty of people to come into the city by carriage. "Young miss, we've arrived," Philip called out from the front seat. "Amen, got it. For now, let's get some food to eat. I'm quite hungry," Shiro replied with a smile. A week ago, after she gave them their first order, the first thing that they did was escort her out of the forest. It turns out that the forest they were in was called Tiryu Forest. If one was to go north, they would reach Tiryu City, which was where they had come from. The closest city to Tiryu City would be Yoru, and that was to the east of Tiryu Forest. To reach Yoru, one would need to travel for around a week with their speed. During this week, Shiro had the shadow guards show them how they would normally use the celestial energy. Similar to mana, they had a hidden reservoir inside them that stored all of their energy. This energy couldn't be regenerated through the day, but only when they rested their bodies. This means that they had to stay still and rest properly for the energy to actually regenerate, since it was akin to their physical stamina. This made it so that they had to be careful with how they used their energy. Should they waste it, they'll be quite vulnerable. As for how they used the energy, they would link their soul strands into this reservoir and have it transferred into their physical body, which then allows them to activate their spells. Thankfully for Shiro, this meant that her broken mana links couldn't prevent her from using this power. But now the problem was that both girls were needed to use this power. With Kuromi no longer being inside her, their strands couldn't link up properly, so their reservoir was essentially cut off. But this didn't bother her too much since they could always experiment. However, with the guards around, it would be dangerous to expose their experiments, so they both agreed to keep it on hold for now. In addition to this, Shiro and Kuromi both decided to train the shadow guards under the guise of practice. It may seem like the two girls were being trained through the guards' guidance, but with their meticulous planning and positioning, they slowly forced the unneeded movements out of each and every guard, slowly refining them into lethal killers. Of course, they weren't able to do much within the week, but compared to what they were like before, each guard could fight 2 copies of themselves without a single problem. There were also a few changes in the shadow guards' mindsets. Despite being the ones training the 2 girls, they felt like they were suppressed. Their confidence and aura would overwhelm their senses at the start of the battle, but soon fade. Shiro, a girl they realized to have the confidence to envelop everything under her rule. A tyrant that could swallow everything up, refusing to be swallowed up. An endless void that hungers. Kuromi, the older sister that was similar yet different to Shiro. Sure, she was also like a void that absorbs everything, but rather than consume, she controls them. As if placing them in a stasis, she would link strings to them and control them like a puppeteer. Every time one of the shadow guards fought against her, it was as if they were in a play that Kuromi wrote herself. Only when she gave you permission were you allowed to move/act with your own will. Both girls were equally frightening, and the guards unconsciously submitted themselves towards the two, accepting them as their new masters. "Say, Kuromi, do you think we should get ourselves a residence here first? We'll have the guards do some tasks and make some money," Shiro asked while peering out into the streets of Yoru. "Huh? Why would we do that? I'm more concerned about structuring the guards properly first. Plus, since we're going to be stirring some serious business in this world, having a secure residence is akin to a chain that would bind us down," Kuromi replied with a shake of her head. In her hands was a makeshift notebook of sorts, and it contained all of the information she had written down for the shadow guards. With a total of 26 members, including the captain, Philip, Kuromi organized them into 4 categories: attackers, defenders, support, and utility. Each category was rather self-explanatory due to their titles. As for how many members were in each category, they were listed as such: attackers, 12 members; defenders, 4 members; support, 8 members; utility, 2 members. The next few pages were some information about each of the members. For now, Kuromi had labeled them with their code names, but they had planned to give them each a different name once they've finished gathering all of the supplies that they need. "Young miss, what is it that you wanted to eat? It's a little dangerous for you to be going out, so we'll buy it for you," Philip called out while stabilizing the carriage. "What I want to eat? I don't know. Isn't it easier for me to just come out and choose for myself? Shiro smiled. But, it's fine, Philip. I doubt she'll listen anyways. Kuromi closed her book with a sigh. I understand. Philip nodded since he understood how stubborn Shiro could be during this week. Opening the carriage doors, both Shiro and Kuromi walked out of the carriage as they stretched their bodies. Since they didn't want to be recognized too soon, they had a mask that obscured their faces. Shiro wore a white and red hanfu much like what she had worn back in the quest, where Lyrica obtained Yuan Tian, while Kuromi wore a black and blue hanfu. After stretching her body, Shiro looked towards the restaurant that they were in front of and couldn't help but smell a wonderful scent coming from the kitchen. Ho ho, seems like we're going to get some good food today. To be honest, I'm somewhat tired of having the bland meat that we've been making for the past week. Shiro smiled while making her way into the restaurant. It's no wonder that Yin's a glutton with your eating habits. To be honest, it seems like she's just an enhanced version of you that somehow got a skill. Kuromi sighed. Well, let's just be honest here, why don't we? Since we're the same, both you and I know that you would pamper her just as much as I did. Shiro chuckled. Fufu, maybe not. Who knows? After all, it's also thanks to this skill that my dear niece is not an obese phoenix. Now that would be quite depressing. It's both a blessing and a curse, I suppose. Kuromi smiled. Yeah, a curse for my wallet. Shiro rolled her eyes. Oh please, you can earn more for darlinging, can't you? Plus it's not like you're going to be spending that much money anyways. What do you mean I'm not going to be spending that much money? I might need it to buy some materials and weapons, you know. Shiro furrowed her brows. Perhaps, but highly unlikely. Not only that, I'm pretty sure that you're more likely to borrow the material or weapon than buy it like a lawful person. I am lawful. It's just called long-term borrowing, which means I might return the item or material should I still have it and don't have a use for it. You? Being lawful? I'll believe that when the system crumbles and the gods die. Kuromi rolled her eyes. Oh yeah? You want to bet? Shiro frowned. I don't want to make a bet for you to do something reckless. You are the main after all. Your life is my life. Kuromi shook her head. While this was all happening, Philip only ignored this since their two young misses go through this episode of drama every single day. They just dismiss it as children playing since young people tend to be more imaginative. Maybe they're going through an embarrassing phase that they might want to forget. Philip thought to himself while following them into the restaurant. Entering the restaurant, the three of them paid for a normal table since they weren't exactly well off for money. Ordering a few of the more simple dishes, they waited patiently while Shiro glanced out at the streets. It's quite peaceful here, isn't it? Shiro asked while giving Philip a brief glance. Indeed. Philip nodded but was confused as to why Shiro had asked him such a question. Too bad this piece will be destroyed once Shiro's done with it. Kuromi shook her head since she understood that if Shiro was to spread the information about what had happened in Tiryu, the families in Yoru would definitely be curious. Waiting for a short while, the food finally arrived as Shiro smiled eagerly. Grabbing a chopstick, she moved her mask out of the way slightly and started to eat. It was unfortunate that they didn't have the spare funds to get a private room, but she could still eat without revealing who she was. However, her action of not removing her mask seemed to have drawn the attention of other customers around them. Seeing her smile and rosy lips, they could already tell that she was beautiful without even looking at the upper half of her face. Kuro, are you not eating? Shiro asked with a smile. It's not that I'm not eating, it's just that there seem to be quite a few eyes on us, no? Kuromi replied while glancing over her shoulders. Feeling as if a beast had just swept its eyes across them, the customers quickly returned back to their meals and didn't dare to look towards the table. AI, why must you be so bothered? Shiro sighed while giving Kuromi a small signal. Seeing the signal, Kuromi knew that Shiro was telling her to not provoke anyone for now. Fine. Kuromi sighed. She didn't exactly like having people stare at her while she was eating, but she'd hold herself back for now since she too understood the dangers. If she provoked a wrong person, they could just sneeze and erase her. Finishing their meal, the trio left the restaurant. But before they could get into their carriage, both Shiro and Kuromi felt a disgusting stare on their back as both girls snapped their heads towards the second floor of the roof with a scowl. You feel that, Kuromi? Shiro asked with displeasure in her voice. Obviously. That F***'s lucky I don't have access to my powers right now, or else I would have plucked his eyes out for that. Kuromi replied angrily. Just before they entered their carriage, they had felt a stare sweep over them and try to imagine them in the nude. Such a repulsive glare naturally made both girls angry, as they wanted nothing more than to kill that guy, but had to restrain themselves for now. Going back into the carriage in a bad mood, the two closed the door, leaving a confused Philip. What? He muttered as he had no idea what just happened. Furrowing his brows, he looked towards where the two were glaring and saw nothing. Strange, he thought to himself before leading the carriage away to get some supplies. Meanwhile, a man was smiling lightly in one of the private rooms with tins of beauties besides him. Telltale that two decent merchandise have entered Yuru. The man called out to one of the servants standing by the door. Understood, sir. As the servant left the room, the man glanced towards the leaving carriage and couldn't help but smile. To think that two beauties with such ferocious glares have entered this city without me knowing. This might be a good chance to get rid of Tao since he's been quite a pain in my neck. He thought with a smile before indulging himself with the beauties around him. Anoya. ####. As the carriage traveled through the city, Philip had the guards buy and load supplies into the back of the cart, while also sending a few people to gather some information about Tiryu. Unfortunately, it seemed like all information from Tiryu had stopped coming out. This apparently happened almost 2 weeks ago, which was when the family was destroyed. So in order for them to understand what the situation is like, they'll have to enter Tiryu themselves. That's a little troublesome. In that case, then can you get me a list of all the major families in Yuru? Shiro furrowed her brows. Of course, miss. One of the guards nodded before disappearing. What are you planning to do with a list of families in this city, young miss? Philip asked curiously. Oh, nothing much. I just want to see who I want to avoid. Shiro replied with a smile. Of course, Kuromi knew that was a lie since it was going to be a list of targets that she wanted to make use of. After a whole day of traveling through the city, they decided to rest up at an inn for now and try to make some money tomorrow. Phew, finally some private time, huh? Shiro glanced over at Kuromi, who was in the same room. MN, so what are you planning now? Kuromi asked with a smile. What am I planning? Oh, nothing much. Shiro grinned. And you really expect me to accept that? Kuromi raised her eyebrows. Well, you're me, so you probably know what I'm planning, don't you? I do, and as your big sister, I say it's a bad idea. Kuromi shook her head with a smile. That's only if I get caught. I'm just going to pay the families a visit and borrow some funds. Shiro chuckled. You know they can probably catch you like it's nothing, you know? We don't exactly have a way out right now. Even a simple servant of theirs can kick our ass. Kuromi replied. Hence why you're coming with me. We're going to give one of our theories a try. If it works, I should be able to access my celestial raiment EX. And if it doesn't, then I suppose we're F***ked then. Shiro replied. Not exactly. Kuromi smiled. What do you mean? Your dear big sister here has been working her mind off for your sake. While you've been playing around, I've managed to make 5 prototypes that should allow us to use celestial energy, but they haven't been tested out yet. Kuromi chuckled. Wait, really? Shiro raised her eyebrows. Oh, of course. We're the same person, so you know that I won't lie about this. Kuromi replied while sitting by the window. Now, lil sis, I expect a payment of some kind for you to get these 5 prototypes. Kuromi narrowed her eyes. Payment? Shiro frowned. Oh, don't make such a face. It's nothing too serious. Kuromi grinned. What do you mean? I want you to say a few lines for me. Wait, what? Only a few lines? Sure, that's fine. Shiro nodded. Are you sure you want to be his hasty to agree? Kuromi smiled. Well, you're me, so surely you won't torture me, right? Shiro shrugged, but paused when she saw Kuromi's smiling face. OSH*T. Shiro muttered. I want you to say these lines. Oh, my amazing, strong, and beautiful big sis Kuromi. I've been hurt by the bad people outside, and I want you to pamper me as much as you can so that I can recover from being sad. Set me on your laps and stroke my hair. Protect me like I'm a baby, Kuromi said with a grin. Seeing the familiar sadistic aura in her eyes, Shiro knew that Kuromi wasn't joking. IF***CK, she really is me. What's wrong, Shiro? I thought you promised me. You're gonna break big sis's heart here. Kuromi acted while keeping a grin on her face. Gritting her teeth, Shiro took a deep breath. Oh, my amazing SD, F***CK? I can't do it. She stopped immediately as she was embarrassed by the fact that she had to say such a line. Haha, fine, big sis will cut you a break. You can also just say this line if you don't want to say the other one. Pamper me, feed me, and make me yours. I want you to treat me like your precious, delicate treasure, Kuromi said with a giggle. Damn it, Kuro. Both are terrible, and you know it. Shiro raged with a blush. Of course I do. Why do you think I chose it? Now come here, my dear maiden of a sister, and tell big sis what she wants to hear. Kuromi smiled, looking at Shiro, who was looking out through the window with an angry pout. Kuromi couldn't help but giggle softly. What are you giggling about? Shiro asked as she glanced over at her. Oh, nothing much. Just remembering how my dear lil sis asked me to pamper her last and dash. La 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 la. I can't hear you. Shiro covered her ears since she didn't want to remember. If any of the girls in the party knew that she had to say such an embarrassing line, then her image would be shattered. Oh please, it wasn't a bad trade, okay? We now know a little of what we should do for us to actually use the celestial energy, Kuromi said with a smile. I guess, but it's still a little inefficient to be actually put into battle. Shiro sighed. It's a start. Kuromi chuckled. True. Anyways, we've collected most of the things that we need from this city, so I guess we'll be going back to Tiryu to see what's the state of things there. Shiro replied while looking back at the window. Do you think Philip will agree to that? I'll be honest, he will probably say no. But I got my own plans. Shiro smiled. Peeking her head out of the carriage, Shiro looked towards Philip. Philip, she called out. Yes, young miss. Can we make our way to Tiryu? I want to get some information about the aftermath of what happened and see the current state of the city. Shiro asked. I'm afraid I can't do that, young miss. Considering the fact that they probably don't want information about the spell to be leaked outside, they probably have the entire city on lockdown. Philip shook his head. I know, but what if we just had a few of the shadow guards do this task? If there are only one of two of them, surely they can succeed, no? Shiro persuaded. No, miss, you don't understand. I'm saying we'll be discovered the moment we get close to the city. They had people standing guard on the city walls, making sure that no one sneaks in or out. Philip shook his head. Furrowing her brows, Shiro stayed silent for a moment. Kuro, you got any ideas? She turned towards Kuromi. Some, but that would be skipping some steps, and it might backfire. Kuromi replied. Oh, what's the plan? Shiro asked as she sat back down. We'll just spread the information about the spell that father made, but with some exaggeration. Mix in a few truths such as, have you not realized that Tiryu city seemed to have fallen silent? No one comes back from that city, and the spell was designed so that his daughters can use it with just one soul strand. Imagine if a normal person got their hands on that spell. That way, it'll rouse some of their interests. Feed them a few more lies and half-truths for a while, and they'll make their way to Tiryu to see for themselves. The more people we get to enter Tiryu, the better chances of success. After all, the bigger the commotion, the harder it is to cover up. There might also be the chance that a few of the people might actually escape and reveal the truth to the other cities. Once that happens, the families in Tiryu will be surrounded by enemies everywhere. Kuromi replied while writing something down on her pad. Indeed, that is skipping a few steps. There are still mysteries surrounding Tiryu, and I don't exactly want to basically start a coup without information. Shiro frowned. That's why I said it might backfire. There's a good chance that whoever tries to invade Tiryu will die, so it would just be a waste. Kuromi nodded. Arg. So annoying. Shiro frowned. It's annoying because it's hard. And it's hard because we have no powers, so we must rely on wit to win our battles for now. Have some patience. Kuromi replied with a smile before closing her notebook. What have you written? Shiro asked curiously. Oh, I just gave each of the guards their names. I'll talk to them about this once we leave this city. As they continued to talk for a little longer, the guards soon collected everything that the two girls had requested. All right, for now, how about we make some money? With the items and materials they bought for us, I can probably make some decent food and get us some funds. Kuromi smiled. But we don't have a shop, do we? Shiro tilted her head. Dummy Shiro, ever heard of food stalls? Kuromi giggled. Don't call me dummy. Shiro furrowed her brows. Oh, come on, lil sis. Let big sis have this one. Anyways, I got work to do, so just hang tight for now. Kuromi smiled before getting off the carriage. Walking around to the back, she started to sort through all of the materials. Placing a table in front of her, The guard stood beside her and watched with curiosity. Ignoring the guards, Kuromi started to tinker away at the materials while standing up. A few of the passing people were rather surprised after seeing this masked woman play around with little pieces on a table and decided to stay behind to see what she was planning. After a few moments, they were surprised at what she had created. With just wood and some small pieces of metal, she had created a few of the more modern-style toys. Huh? When the hell did she become a toy maker? Shiro widened her eyes. Placing one of the finished products on the table, she continued to tinker away as the spectators looked at the toy with interest. "Excuse me, miss, what have you made?" One of the spectators asked with curiosity. It's a toy for children. Children are filled with imagination, so if you get one or two of these for your children, I can guarantee that they'll grow up with a fresh and vivid imagination. Think about this. If as children they can imagine a glorious battlefield where they use amazing spells, then won't they be able to make such revolutionary spells when they grow up? After all, it's all about the mind, no? Plus, where else have you seen such items like these? Kuromi chuckled. Thinking about it for a moment, the man nodded and asked for how much they cost. Well, for a unique item, how much do you think it costs? Since you're the first customer, I'll allow you to think of the price. Of course, if it's too low, I won't be able to sell it. Kuromi smiled. She had already researched about how much the gold here is worth. A single meal at the restaurant cost around 15 gold, and it could be afforded by most of the people around here. So a toy was within their range. As for how much it cost her to make the toys, the materials cost around 5 gold, so anything higher would be a profit. How about 10 gold? The man suggested. Clearly surprised at his offer, Kuromi nodded her head. Very fair price, sir, and to think you got it dead on the price. Small toys like this are 10 gold, while large toys are 15. Since you're the first customer, how about I take only 8? She replied with a smile. Really? Thank you very much then, the man said while going through with the trade. After he left, Kuromi continued to make more toys. While she was doing this, she had the shadow guards make 2 signs saying large toys will cost around 15 gold, while small toys will cost 10. The large toys are things like dragons, and such, while small toys are humanoid. Of course, that wasn't all. She had a variety of toys, but if they had a special thing in mind, they'll have to pay 20 gold for a large commission and 15 gold for a small commission. However, if the commission was very complicated, she'll charge accordingly, depending on how much of a hassle it was. By the end of the day, she managed to make quite a profit for herself as there were still more people who wanted to buy the toys. Sorry, I'll be finishing up for today. I'm planning on staying for a day or two, so I'll be here again tomorrow at sunrise if you want to buy something. First customer of the day will get a discount, of course. Kuromi smiled before packing everything up. Walking into the carriage, she had Philip lead them towards the closest inn. See? I've managed to get us some funds. Kuromi smiled as she showed Shiro the heavy money bag. When did you even learn how to make these? Shiro asked with a raised eyebrow. Oh, when Kiyomi was little, she used to want a lot of toys, but Mom and Dad refused since they wanted her to practice with martial arts. Hence why I just got a bunch of wood and metal so that I can make toys for her myself. Kuromi shrugged with a smile. Huh, that's quite thoughtful of you. Shiro nodded. Oh, could it be that you want Big Sis to make you a toy too? Maybe you also want me to pamper you. Kuromi grinned. Oh, screw off. Shiro rolled her eyes, but had a soft smile on her face. Spending night at the inn, they continued to sell toys for 2 more days and had made quite the substantial profit. While it couldn't be compared to what a big family may earn, it was more than enough for their current group. In addition to this, Kuromi had also given each of the shadow guards their names so that it was easier to talk to them. During these 2 days, they noticed that there had been a few people observing them hidden on the roofs, but decided to ignore it for now since they were going to be leaving the city once the guards finished collecting all of the information. Currently, they were spending their final night at the inn. Shiro was looking out of the window at a few of the observers, while Kuromi was writing in her notebook as usual. Kuromi, what do you think about taking one of them hostage and interrogating them for information about who's been keeping an eye on us? Shiro suggested. You know that's a bad idea. Just try to be tolerant for now until we can consistently use celestial energy without fulfilling a bunch of conditions. Kuromi replied. URG. What are you even writing in your notebook? I know that there is a bunch of information about the guards and such, but what's this second notebook for? Shiro asked while looking at Kuromi. This was one of the things that set them apart since Kuromi seemed to like writing in her notebook a lot and had quite a bit of patience while Shiro was more of a hands-on person. This? Oh, just some information about this world. I'm writing down a few strategies with the information I've gathered. These include battles inside the city and what we should do should you accidentally piss off one of the people that live here. There are also some strategies for our guards so that they can help us earn money without us being here. Kuromi replied, You know, if it wasn't for your cheat of a database, you'd probably be doing what I'm doing. She smiled. Well, duh, we're the same person. You're me, but without my Snowmancer class and the benefits it comes with. Shiro shrugged. True. Anyways, if you were wondering about who was keeping an eye on us, I've already tracked them down so you can lead a bunch of our men to try to see if you can capture them. Thankfully, they're not too powerful, so it should be doable. You have. Shiro widened her eyes. Yeah, unlike you, I've been working my ass off every day. All of this just so that you can have some fun and actually fight. Kuromi sighed while massaging her neck. Cough. Well, my expertise is in punching and stabbing. I'm not fit for delicate operations like this. Shiro lied. Yeah, bullshit T. You're just too lazy to try. We're the same person, so what I can do you can do as well. Kuromi rolled her eyes. Anyways, take this note that I've written and give it to Nui and Prim. Those two girls are best for delicate operations like this since they focus on stealth. Handing Shiro a note, Kuromi started to write in her notepad once more. Target, Tao. Slave merchant residing near the red light district. He kidnaps and sells young women to the brothels and gets a hefty sum from the sales. Not only that, he's one of the bigger traders in the nearby cities, so he may have some information in regards to what's happening in Tiryu. As for his guards, he has 2 level 3 guards standing outside his room whenever he does the act, so your best choice is to take him during this time. Rainove. Kuro, what do you mean by level 3 guard? Shiro asked curiously. Oh right, I still haven't told you the level system that I thought up to categorize them, huh? Well, basically, level 1 users of celestial energy could be a match for level 50 adventurers. Level 2 is around level 75, and level 3 are level 100 adventurers. This is still a work in progress, so the scale might not be entirely accurate since I haven't seen nor analyzed their fights in detail. But with what I've heard of his guards, they should be level 100 give or take in our world. Kuromi replied. In that case, then what are the levels of our shadow guards? They average to around level 2 with a few in level 3. Nui and Prim are level 3, hence why I'm having you take them with you on this quest. Is that so? Wait a minute. Would they even agree to this? I thought they didn't want us to be fighting. Shiro tilted her head. You're not fighting. You're only getting rid of a cancer to women in this world. Think of it as medical treatment. Plus, fighting is a last resort since you're a liability right now. Kuromi replied while glancing over at her. I see. If they knew what Tao was doing, it's no surprise that they'll be on board for this. Indeed. Now you'll find Nui and Prim in room 5. I've already talked to them about this, so they should know the moment you come into their room. Kuromi smiled. Cool. Welp, time to stretch my body a little. It's been so long since I had a good run. Shiro grinned. MN. See you later then, Nurse Shiro, haha. Kuromi chuckled. PFT. What the hell do you mean by Nurse Shiro? Do I look like someone who would be a nurse? Shiro frowned. Of course. By that I mean in the kinky way. Have you not seen the nurse outfits that they have? To be honest, I'm pretty sure that if I pitch this idea to dear old Lyrica, she'll have a nosebleed over you. Kuromi giggled softly. Oh, whatever. I'm more like a serial killer disguised as a nurse then. Shiro rolled her eyes. Fair point. Though I suppose I would make quite the seductive nurse now. Get one of their outfits, a pair of glasses, a lab coat on top of that, and some tights. When a patient enters, I'll be like, Era, you've been quite a clumsy person, haven't you? Come closer so I can give you a thorough checkup. Kuromi said with a seductive tone. Oh god f***ck, that's strange. We have the same appearance right now, you know. Look at my arm, I've got goosebumps. Shiro protested since it was an awful experience for her to see herself try to act like a seductive nurse. What do you mean by strange? Big sis Kuro's gonna be hurt, you know? I'm trying to teach you some techniques to bring Lyrica into your bed. It might be helpful, who knows? Plus, even if you don't get with Lyrica, since she's your best friend, I don't mind hell I on either, you know? As your big sister, I approve of them both to be my sibling-in-laws. Kuromi laughed. Blushing slightly at the thought, Shiro quickly left the room since she didn't want to think about that. God, what is Kuromi even thinking about bringing that up? Shiro thought to herself as she quickly snapped out of it. However, the thought lingered for a short moment. After a long day's work in the dungeon, she'd come back to her room to relax and get a gentle massage by either Lyrica or Helion. As they continue, it'll slowly develop into something else. Gah, damn it, Kuro! Shiro shouted out in embarrassment and slammed her head against the wall to get rid of the thoughts. Asterisk bang. Young miss? Philip widened his eyes since he just saw Shiro slam her head against the wall all of a sudden. Oh, it's just you, Phil. It's nothing, don't worry, Shiro smiled as she was a little dizzy from the hit. Talking to Philip for a little longer in order to convince him that she was fine, she calmed herself before looking for Nui and Prim's room. She was going to take out all of her embarrassment on Tao for making Kuromi torture her like this. Asterisk knock knock. Come in. Nui's voice rang out. Entering the room, Shiro saw both Nui and Prim ready with their gear. Second, young miss, as first miss instructed, we'll be protecting you during this excursion. However, should we detect any danger, we'll be bringing you back immediately, okay? Prim said as she kneeled down in front of Shiro. Don't worry, I understand. Shiro smiled. Discussing the plan once more so that they understood what they should do, the trio left the room through the window. Jumping out of the window, Shiro had a grin on her face since this was when she felt most alive. Even though she couldn't use mana or celestial raiment to reinforce her body, she was more than capable of shifting momentum to her advantage. Kicking off the wall, she jumped onto the opposite building and dashed along the roof. Both Nui and Prim were used to Shiro's monstrous parkour abilities with just her physical body, so they weren't too surprised. However, that didn't mean it wasn't a sight to behold. Following behind her, Nui and Prim watched out for anyone that would be observing them at this time of night. Nui, one to your left around 200 meters. Prim, one behind you on the roof. Shiro called out without even looking around her. Pivoting on her foot while in motion, 2 daggers slid into her hands from within her sleeves as she threw it towards their locations. Arg! Crying out in surprise, the 2 observers revealed their locations as both Nui and Prim finished them off quickly. Second, young miss, if you don't mind, can I ask how you did that? Nui asked curiously. Instinct. I just traced their stares back to their source. We as humans have times where we know someone is watching us and their general direction. For this is just heavily enhanced. Shiro replied with a smile. Leaping across a gap between buildings, she slid on her feet for a few steps before throwing 2 more daggers at a few observers that were drawn to their location due to the commotion. With Shiro being the scout of sorts and pinpointing the enemies with her daggers, Nui and Prim cleaned up after her as they sped through the city without too many problems since they killed their enemies before they could even use their celestial energy. As they were approaching Tao's residence, Shiro wondered if she had enough daggers at hand. Thanks to Nui and Prim retrieving them whenever we attack our enemies, I still have around 10 daggers in my sleeves. This should be enough, but if we get into a fight, I might not be able to delay them as much as I hoped. Maybe we should go to an enchanter or something to see if they can upgrade these daggers. She thought to herself while crouching down. Since they were about to reach Tao's residence, the number of guards nearby had increased dramatically, and if they didn't want to be discovered, they had to be quiet. Second, young miss, the moment we fight, everyone nearby will be alerted, so we'll retreat immediately should anything bad happen. Nui reminded. Don't worry, I know. Shiro smiled before climbing down onto the balcony. Stabbing her dagger into the wall, she slowly removed a few of the bricks to form a gap just big enough for each of them to enter. It was located just above the second floor so that she would be on the support beams. Entering the building, she balanced herself on the support beam and hid it in shadows. Waiting till both Nui and Prim entered into the building, the trio made their way through the support beams without alerting anyone who were patrolling below them. As much as she wanted to just attack them all and get things over and done with, she knew that it would just overcomplicate a few things. Thankfully, most of the people here were only level 1 guards, so even if things went wrong, they can deal with it quite easily. Nui, Prim, since we're trying to avoid being seen, I'll be relying on you 2 to tell me if there's someone around the corner, okay? Shiro whispered as the 2 girls nodded. While Shiro and Nui were advancing forward, Prim pressed her fingers against the ground. Spiderweb. She muttered as a translucent web of string started to expand from her location. This spell was a rather weak one, as it doesn't use too much of her energy, but it was great for locating where people are. Not only that, but due to its low cost, it was quite hard to detect. Of course, she could also increase the output to make the strings harder to get rid of. Closing her eyes, Prim could see the location of everyone who's tripped her strings. One person at the next corner to our right. He should be looking away from our entrance in around 5 seconds. Prim reported quietly. Making an okay sign, Shiro whispered in Nui's ear. When I'm about to turn the corner, I want you to punch towards me, and I'll use that momentum to surprise attack the person. Understood. Nui nodded since she trusted Shiro's commands. Walking forward a little more, Shiro counted down from 3 with her fingers. Once it reached 0, Nui twisted her body slightly and punched towards Shiro as she had instructed. Shiro jumped into the air lightly and stepped against Nui's punch, using it as a springboard. As her body launched forward, she entered the man's line of sight. Quickly kicking against the wall, Shiro arrived before him with 2 daggers drawn. The first dagger stabbed into his mouth, while the second into his temple. Using them as handles, she swung her body around his head and used the 2 daggers as a corkscrew to snap the man's neck. Asterisk crack. Breaking his neck and killing him. Shiro quickly balanced herself and made sure that no blood flowed down. Placing his body gently against the wall, she nodded to the other 2 as they continued to proceed towards Tao's room. Thankfully, since she was swift in killing the man, he wasn't able to scream, so no one was alerted. Right then, he should be in the room below us. Shiro muttered as grunts could be heard with soft sobs. Taking a deep breath since she knew what was happening, she looked towards the other 2. I know Kuromi said we should take him alive, but do you want to just kill this F***er now? Shiro whispered. Why don't we take him back anyway? I'm sure some of our sisters in the Shadow Guards are more than happy to torture him. Nui suggested after a moment of thought. I want to kill him now, but Nui makes a good point. Prim followed up. How about this? We'll take him if we can, but if things go south, kill him straight away then leave. Shiro replied after a moment. Nodding her head, the 2 girls agreed. Carefully removing the wooden panels, Shiro looked down into the room and was instantly overwhelmed by the smell of incense. F***ck? My nose. Shiro cried out in her mind as she recoiled back a little. The thing about having sharp senses was that good becomes great and bad becomes worse. Stabilizing herself so that she didn't make any noise, Shiro shook her head lightly and prepared to attack. Handing the 2 a rope that she had kept under her waist sash for emergency situations, she tied it to one of her ankles and slowly descended into the room with the help of the 2. Making eye contact with the woman who was under Tao, Shiro made a shushing gesture before she could shout out. Tao was a rather thin man with hardly any fat, but he wasn't exactly muscular either. His features couldn't be seen as she was behind him, but she didn't care for that since her goal was to kidnap him. Once she was behind him, she was about to slam the pommel of her dagger against his temple when his head suddenly recoiled back and hit her in the face. F***ck? My nose again. She shouted out in her mind with anger and quickly knocked the man out. I'll come back in a second. Shiro whispered to the woman who nodded her head with a face full of tears. Climbing back up the sash, now with a second person, Shiro handed him over to the girls and had them restrain him. Naturally, he was quickly wrapped with some bedsheets since she wanted to spare her eyes the torture of seeing him in full nude. Climbing back down, she carefully dressed the woman up before carrying her up to the ceiling with just one hand. I need you to be as quiet as possible for the next few minutes, okay? If you can do that, I'll get you out of here and help you have a new life. Shiro said with a small smile. Seeing the confidence and comfort she could feel from the white-haired girl that was carrying her, the girl nodded her head since she didn't want this opportunity to fly away. Making their way back out of the building without alerting anyone, the 3 of them, plus 1 hostage and a victim, managed to get away without much trouble. Once they distanced themselves far enough from the building, Shiro sighed in relief. Phew, that was pretty successful, wasn't it? Shiro smiled towards her 2 guards. Amen, indeed, second young miss. Nui nodded her head. Who are you? The woman called out in confusion. Me? My name is Shiro. Shiro replied since she didn't have her mask on right now. Thank you. Miss Shiro, for saving my life. The woman bowed slightly. Don't worry about it. Say, what's your name? My name is Velry. I no longer have a surname since I've been sold as a slave. Velry replied. I see. Well, for now, I'll take you back to our place and get you cleaned up. Once that's done, we can talk about what you can do from now on, okay? Shiro smiled as Velry nodded her head. Arriving back at their inn, the three of them climbed through Kuromi's window. Welcome back. Seems like you've brought in an additional person as well. Kuromi raised her eyebrows. Well, she was there, and I couldn't help it, you know. If the guards realized that Tao disappeared and she was the only one there, she'd be killed. Shiro replied with a slight smile. I know. Nui, take that lady over there and help her get cleaned up. If she's hungry, get her some food and new clothes. Prim, I want you to call for all the female members of the Shadow Guard since I'm sure they'll be happy to torture this guy over here. Kuromi ordered as both of them nodded their heads. Leading Velry out of the room, Shiro sat down on the bed while Tao was thrown into the corner. So how was it? Was your exercise good enough? Kuromi asked with a smile. A little. It was just a shame that I couldn't use any spells. If I could have access to my celestial energy, then I would have just completely flattened their estate. Shiro shrugged. But if you did that, you might have accidentally killed that woman or any other victims. Collateral damage, lil sis. You have to remember that. Kuromi shook her head. I suppose so. Before they could continue to talk, they heard a soft groan as Tao slowly opened his eyes. Unfortunately for him, before he could even make a sound, Kuromi had walked up to him and instantly kicked him in the crotch. Stepping down with the same foot, she pushed her entire weight down and roundhouse kicked him in the head, knocking him out once more. You should not have thrown him against the wall. It woke him up a little earlier than planned. Kuromi replied while sitting back down on her chair. Ouch. I can see a bit of blood, you know. And it's not like he'll be using it anymore once the girls finish torturing him. Kuromi shrugged before taking her shoes off. Frowning in disgust, she set them aside for now so that she can throw them away later. Anyways, don't we need to interrogate him for some information about Tiryu? Are you sure destroying his junk is good? Shiro asked. Don't worry about it. Just because he lost his D*CK doesn't mean he can't talk anymore. I'll have the girls get some information from him during the torture so you don't have to worry about it. Of course, if you want to torture him as well, you can follow us. Kuromi suggested. It would circumflex bees. No, it's fine. If I come as well, the other girls won't have as much fun. The more people there are, the less time they each have to punish this guy. Shiro shook her head. That's pretty thoughtful in a gruesome way, I suppose. In that case, then you can just sleep for now and rest up. Since we can't use any celestial energy to reinforce our bodies, I'm sure that you've used quite a bit of stamina, haven't you? Kuromi asked with a soft smile. A little. But I suppose not having access to the energy is also more productive since I can't just brute force it. It forces me to think more about what I do. Shiro nodded as she laid her body down on the bed. Stretching a little, she started to unequip all of her items so that she's just left with her clothes. Furrowing her brows, she decided to wait until the guards take Tao away for interrogation before getting undressed for bed. After waiting a few moments, the female members of the Shadow Guards arrived and took the unconscious Tao away as Shiro relaxed and changed into some pajamas. You should sleep as well, Kuro. Shiro yawned slightly. I'll sleep later. I got some more things to write down. Don't worry though, I'll make sure to get enough rest. Kuromi smiled as Shiro nodded. Closing her eyes, Shiro slowly fell asleep. As Kuromi continued to write in her notepad, roughly 2 hours passed before she stopped. Sighing out softly, Kuromi leaned back on her chair before glancing towards Shiro. Seeing her sleeping face, Kuromi smiled softly before also getting changed for bed. Crawling under the sheets and laying next to Shiro, Kuromi thought for a moment before turning towards her and hugging her. How long has it been since someone has hugged her? No, hug me like this. Kuromi thought to herself while closing her eyes. Little did she know, Shiro was woken up by this, but didn't make a move and only smiled. ####. Waking up early in the morning, Kuromi got changed and made sure that she didn't wake up Shiro since she was sleeping peacefully. Leaving the room, Kuromi went downstairs to get some food and saw some of the shadow guards that had been responsible for torturing Tao last night. So did you girls get any good information from that guy? Kuromi asked with a smile. She was okay with discussing this information here, since she had already bought out the inn with her money. The only people in this place were the shadow guards. A little. His information was also cut off once the enemies attacked, but at least we know everyone who's involved, even those that didn't directly appear in the actual attack. One of the girls replied, "Is that so? Give me a list of them and what you know about each family," Kuromi said while sitting down with her notebook. After listening to their reports, Kuromi had a serious expression. After all, in addition to the families in Tiryu, it seems like the royal family was also involved in this, as they hold the most power. It was also due to the royal family that all of the information was sealed off the moment the attack happened. This is bad. Even if we get the other families to rebel, the royal family can stop it all once they get involved. Kuromi thought with a frown. Taking a deep breath, she thought long and hard about some of the things that they could do. First problem was the royal family's strength. The plan of having the outside families attack Tiryu would be foiled the moment the royal family steps up, so she needed something to keep the royal family at bay while everything is happening. The second problem would be manpower. They needed something that can hold back the royal family, or else they'll just be killing themselves. In addition to this, she also doesn't know their full strength, so this could be a variable that crushes her plans. Annoying. Kuromi muttered to herself. Manpower is lacking, power is lacking. They're not exactly tyrants, so staging a coup would be hard. Not only that, but one wrong move, and we'll be surrounded at all sides with enemies. We could use Celestial Raiment EX, but that can only hold out for so long since we haven't perfected the technique yet. It's still quite inefficient. Yon. What seems to be the problem, Kuro? Shiro called out while walking down the stairs. Ah, you're awake, Kuromi said while turning toward Shiro. Yeah, you seem distressed, so tell me about it, and I might be able to help. Shiro nodded while sitting down next to her. Listening to the situation, Shiro could see why Kuromi was struggling a little. I know this sounds stupid, but why don't we just brute force it? Shiro suggested. Well, we have a dragon and a giant in the Tiryu forest, don't we? Just piss them off and involve them into our plans. We'll try to lure them towards Tiryu City and have the families there try to kill them. After they succeed, we can then spread the news into Yoru and have the families here attack Tiryu, and boom, it should be done. Shiro explained with a shrug. That could work depending on whether or not we can actually lure the two behemoths. Plus, we don't know if they're the only ones in the forest. There may be more. Kuromi nodded after a short moment. The two had slipped her mind since she was more focused on what they could control rather than an uncontrollable variable like the two behemoths. Shaking her head, Kuromi started to piece together a plan that should allow them to pull this off without any casualties. While they were planning on how they could lure the two behemoths into Tiryu, they didn't know about the commotion that they had stirred in the city. With Tao missing and most likely dead, his assets were free for grabs as all of the families were interested. After all, he was one of the biggest traders in the city with connections everywhere. If he's dead, that means his huge fortune is now ownerless. The only reason as to why other people hadn't thought of killing him was because he had the support of several large families from larger families outside of the city. With someone else doing the dirty job, they can take the money without worry. So Tao's missing, huh? I think I might have an idea of who did it, but I must say, they are quite brave for people who are just selling toys on the street. A man smiled while drinking some wine. This was the same person that had told his servants to send the information about the two women to Tao on the first day. Yes, master. We've tried to look for some traces, but all we found was a hole in the wall that was covered up, a dead guard, and a broken wooden plank. Other than that, there seemed to be no struggles from Tao's side. A servant replied. So they managed to take him despite the powerful guards that he kept around him. Interesting. Have some people monitor their inn and see what they're up to. Tell them to try to not get spotted since both girls are quite adept with their senses. Understood. Watching the servant leave, the man drank a bit of wine before standing up. Well, I suppose I might as well make a move as well. Perhaps I should get them once they leave the city. He muttered with a smile. ####. All right, this plan has an 85% chance of success. With our current manpower, getting any higher would be difficult, Kuromi said while showing them the plan. With the dragon's firepower, it would be hard to outrun the destruction, but if we're successful, the rest of the plan should fall into place. What about the giant then? Shiro asked. Depending on the situation, we might not need the giant. But with how things are looking, he should chase after the dragon since they seem to have a rather big feud with each other. If we can get the dragon into Tiryu quickly, the giant should follow behind and fight the dragon in the city. Your main task will be to lure the dragon with the rest of the group, while me and a few selected members will try to locate the giant. Kuromi explained. Sure, shall we set off now? The sooner we do this, the better. Shiro said while standing up. Not yet, don't be so hasty. Kuromi shook her head and gestured for Shiro to sit down. Since we know that they've just had their battle not too long ago, they might be a little weak right now. The first step we should do is to scout out the situation and see if they're in good shape to fight at all. If not, they'll be a little reluctant. True. So how many people are going to scout out the information? Obviously all of us. With so little members, it doesn't matter too much if everyone went. We'll wait until everyone else is awake before making our way to Tiryu Forest. Make sure that you pack up everything. Oh, also, Nui, Prim, have you cleaned up the corpse? Kuromi asked. Of course, first young miss. It would be dangerous to leave his body laying around to act as evidence. Prim nodded her head. Good. Since I'm in a rather good mood after hugging my dear OL sis in my sleep, I'll cook us for a meal. Tell me what you want to eat, and I'll make it. Kuromi smiled as Shiro flinched a little at the mention of hugs. Hugs? Nui tilted her head before looking at Shiro. She couldn't believe that their second young miss would be one that allows other people to hug her. In addition to this, her senses are quite keen, so there's no way that she wouldn't realize that someone had hugged her. Cough. Nui, Prim, why don't we get some supplies for Kuro to cook with? Shiro asked with a smile. Nodding their heads, they quickly left the room before they annoyed Shiro anymore. Sighing heavily, Shiro sat down with an annoyed pout. You don't need to go announcing it everywhere you know? Shiro said with a frown. Oh, but if I didn't, no one would know my little sister's cute side now. Plus, if I get some reactions out of you now, I'll know how to tip your partner off in the future. Which big sister doesn't want to see their strong, independent, and ruthless little sister squirm in embarrassment while trying to hide a blush? Kuromi chuckled while grabbing an apron and tying her hair up into a ponytail. URG, but we're the same person, ah. Can you not torture me like this? While that may be true, we have our own experiences, so unless we merge, we're not exactly the same person yet. Kuromi replied with a smile. Huh, true. Shiro sighed. As Kuromi started to cook the breakfast, Nui and Prim soon returned with a few ingredients while the rest of the shadow guards woke up just in time for breakfast. After eating their fill and thanking Kuromi for her cooking, they started to make their way out of the city in their carriage. After leaving the city, the group started to make their way towards Tiryu Forest. After around 1 hour worth of travel, a hail of arrows could be seen descending from the sky. Attack! Philip shouted out as he snapped his finger. A magic circle could be seen in the air as the area above them seemed to freeze up in time. The arrows, that were descending a moment ago, are now frozen in stasis as the shadow guards readied their weapons. MN, seems like we've attracted some attention onto ourselves, huh? Kuromi said with a smile. MN, let me join in. As long as they don't use their celestial energy, I should be able to kill them quite easily. Shiro grinned as she grabbed the top of the carriage door and flipped herself onto the roof. Narrowing her eyes, she picked out several enemies hidden in the forest. Seems like a bow would work better in this situation. Shiro thought to herself before looking over at the guard closest to the weapon compartment of the carriage. Gareth, bow. Suddy, enchant my arrows. Shiro commanded quickly as Gareth threw a bow towards her direction. Just as she grabbed the bow, Suddy passed her 10 enchanted arrow that had the return enchantment applied to them. Pulling back the bowstrings, Shiro shot 2 arrows towards the first person she could see. Quickly raising up his bow, the man was about to block the arrow when Shiro smiled. Activating the enchantment on the first arrow, she recalled it back to her side as the second arrow pierced the man in the chest after bypassing his guard. Bingo, she said with a grin. With this arrow, it acted as a spark to a stack of gunpowder, igniting the battlefield instantly. Arrows and spells hurled through the air as Kuromi only sat inside the carriage with a soft smile. Glancing out of the carriage, she started to write down a few notes, documenting some of the fighting habits of each member. With the shadow guards on the defense, they were slowly pushed back as more people started to sustain injuries. Thankfully, There hadn't been any casualties yet, but the enemy seemed to be adamant on whittling them down little by little. Even Shiro started to have a frown on her face, since there was only so much she could do with just a pair of bows and arrows. Kuro, any ideas? Shiro asked while shooting a few more arrows before recalling them back with blood soaked on the tips. Out of the 10 arrows that Suddy had given her, only 3 remained as the others were broken during this fight. Of course, I haven't spent the last few moments in the carriage for nothing, you know. Kuromi smiled as she too flipped onto the roof. Everyone, listen up, Kuromi shouted out. Glancing over at her, the guards listened carefully while making sure that they were still fending off the attacks. When I gave you your names, I also gave you each a code number. Do you remember that? She asked with a smile. After seeing a nod from each of the guards, her smile widened into a grin as her eyes seemed to shine with a cold glow. In that case then, let's slaughter some fools. Kuromi grinned since she had already come up with a strategy to get them out of the situation. With Kuromi taking command of the battlefield, the tide was soon turned as the attackers realized that they were being pushed back. Kuromi had set it up so that only 4 people were needed to defend the carriage, and the other 22 guards were free to kill the attackers. Pairing up each of the guards so that their strengths complemented each other, they were able to finish the fight in less than 10 minutes, forcing them to retreat. Watching the entire process happen, Shiro had to admit that the sight was quite scary in a way. From her perspective, Kuromi was like a conductor as everyone was under her control. Working together seamlessly, they overwhelmed the enemies despite their disadvantage in numbers. Closing her notepad, Kuromi nodded with a satisfied smile. Everyone, stick with your pairs from now on since you'll be working with them in the next battle. Kuromi called out before walking back into the carriage. Following behind her, Shiro also went inside the carriage. What do you think? Brute force isn't always the answer, no. Kuromi smiled towards Shiro. I'll admit it is helpful, but if I had access to celestial raiment, I'd be able to deal with them easily. Shiro replied. Yes, but the problem right now is that you don't have that access, do you? Well, just relax for now, and Big Sis will deal with everything. Once we need brute force, I'll call for you, okay? Kuromi chuckled. Fine. Shiro nodded after a moment. ####. What? You mean almost everyone was killed? The man widened his eyes. He had made sure that they outnumbered the enemy, so that capture should only be a matter of time. With a ratio of 3 to 1, he had 78 people surrounding the carriage. After the black-haired woman exited out of the carriage, their formation seemed to have been reinforced as it was very hard to harm the guards. Each of them paired up with one another and overwhelmed us in the shortest time possible. The servant reported as his face was a little pale. Furrowing his brows, the man thought for a moment before sighing. Seems like the white-haired girl is one that's focused on combat, while the black-haired one is focused on strategy. We'll cut our losses here. Just observe them for now and don't make a single move. I want to see what they're planning to do in Tiryu Forest. The man ordered. He understood that with a good strategist, brute force is a questionable approach, so the best he could do right now is to just give up and think of another way. Understood. ####. As the group continued towards the forest, they noticed a lack of attackers ever since the first encounter. You think they got scared? Shiro asked while peering out of the carriage. Probably. Any sane person would do so after we won a fight that had us outnumbered. Kuromi replied while flipping through her book to make any small adjustments to the guard stat pages. MN. Say, do you have any way for me to use celestial energy more efficiently? The current spell we have requires me to charge up for quite a long time. Shiro asked since she somewhat wanted to give fighting the dragon a go. Why would you need that? I'm still working on the spell so you can't rush me. Kuromi replied. Oh, you know, just so that we can lure the dragon and giant better. Shiro replied. That's a lie. You just want to punch a dragon and have it chase you. Kuromi sighed and looked up from her notepad. Maybe. Shiro grinned. Well, I have something better for you to do, but you need to get the F***CK out of there the moment you do that, okay? Oh, what do you mean? Shiro tilted her head. What I mean is I'm allowing you to attack the dragon's reverse scale, or rather, the rear. You can piss it off as much as you want to as long as you direct its hatred to Tiryu City. Say it again, Shiro said as she sat down seriously. I'm allowing you, Shiro, to target the dragon's ass and piss it off. Curling her smile into a grin, Shiro started to plan out how she was going to do this. Since it is a reptile, the dragon will have a cloaca to hide its rear, meaning she'll need to move it out of the way first. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro looked back at Kuromi. "Can I use celestial raiment?" she asked with a smile. "Yes, but do remember that there is only a limited amount of time that the armor is up. We'll have to charge the armor up before we split up, so you'll need to find the dragon as quick as you can during that time." Kuromi nodded. "Great. Since that's the case, then I don't think we need that many guards. You can have more on your side in order to look for the giant." As they made their way to the forest, Kuromi notified the guards about the slight change that they made. Philip wasn't exactly thrilled about the whole situation to begin with, but with Kuromi reducing the number of guards with Shiro, he had his doubts. "First, young miss, you know that second young miss doesn't have access to celestial energy. So what you're doing now is clearly endangering her. Please reconsider," Philip reminded as he had a frown on his face. "Philip, once we arrive, I'll show you why I decided on reducing the guards," Kuromi said as Philip paused for a moment. "Understood. Just so you know, miss, if this doesn't guarantee second young miss's safety, I will not agree to it. Of course, I'm not a cruel big sis, you know. If Shiro can't handle it, I won't let her go to begin with. Otherwise, who else am I going to hug in my sleep?" Kuromi smiled. Shiro didn't notice that Kuromi had just spoiled the secret to every guard, as she was more focused on what she should do to make the most out of her limited reservoir after activating celestial raiment. Even back in their world, she couldn't use the armor for an extended period of time, so she would leave it as a last resort of sorts. Currently, she had a variant of celestial raiment for each of her attunements, meaning 11 sets of armor for her to choose from. With her current reservoir, she can use 2 armors before running out, so she would need to make sure that the first can piss off the dragon while the second allows her to run. The one with the most damage is most likely Void Star, Apocalyptic Lightning, and Cosmic Ice. As for the ones that are focused around speed, they're Lightning, Shadow, and probably Star. I don't want to use Shadow since it's rather revealing, but it does allow me to use Rift Strider again, Shiro thought to herself. In the end, she decided to go with Lighting to attack the dragon and Shadow to run away. Arriving in the forest, they made their way back to the lake as they knew that the dragon was roughly around the northern part of the forest. Sending out a few of the guards to scout out for the dragon, Shiro waited with eagerness. Philip didn't know why Shiro seemed to be so excited, but decided to be patient and see what would happen before giving his thoughts about the situation. After a short while, the guards returned with the location of the dragon. It seemed to have made a nest in one of the mountains and was currently recovering from its fight with the giant. "All right, now then, are you ready, Shiro?" Kuromi said with a smile. "Oh, I've been waiting for this." Shiro nodded. Standing up, Shiro watched as Kuromi etched a magic circle of sorts on the ground. "Right then, pass me one of the enchanted arrows," Kuromi called out as she handed her the arrow. Stabbing it into the ground, the energy seemed to be drained from the arrow into the magic circle. Flaring up with a green light, it started to absorb the energy around them as tethers could be seen slowly connecting to Shiro and Kuromi. Realizing that this seemed to be a variant of the formation that they used to reveal their soul, Philip furrowed his brows in confusion. As time passed, the tethers seemed to grow stronger. "That should do. Remember, Shiro, once I activate this, you'll have to use your raiment as quickly as possible since you're on a timer," Kuromi reminded once more. "Don't worry, I got this," Shiro replied with a grin. "Good." Clasping her hands together, she closed her eyes and started to tug on her tether. Ripping it out from her body, she stumbled back as a translucent flow of energy started to filter through Shiro's tether. Boom. An aura exploded out from her as Philip realized that this was no doubt celestial energy. "No way," he muttered, shock. In front of him, Shiro stood with bright yellow hair and armor that seemed to be crafted from lightning itself. Looking at Shiro in her lightning celestial raiment, Philip couldn't help but feel like he was just punched in the face. Questions filled his mind as he didn't understand how Shiro was able to access celestial energy despite only one strand. The armor seemed alive as the lightning flickered off her body. There seemed to be tints of red within the yellow, making the light seem bloody in a way that inspired fear into his heart. "I've only got a limited amount of time in this form, so I'll be leaving," Shiro said with a grin. Jumping up slightly, two lightning wheels formed under her feet as she launched herself into the air. Looking at each other in shock, a few guards quickly dashed behind her. How? I mean, what? What is this? Philip asked in confusion. It's a skill called celestial raiment. It allows Shiro to use an armor linked to an element she's attuned with. Kuromi explained as she stood up. Her face was a little pale from the backlash of the spell, but other than that, she was unharmed. All right, but how can she use celestial energy? I haven't given you the spell that the Lord had created yet. Oh, so you have the spell on you. That's handy. Anyway, we can do it because I made a new spell. Much like the formation that you used to reveal our souls, I used the same one as a base of a new spell so that we can make a tether between our souls. That way, we can start to charge up celestial energy. Of course, she can only access however much energy we charged up rather than use her own. It's a little rough around the edges, but that's about as good as we can do right now. Kuromi explained. Looking at Shiro, who was flying off into the distance, Philip shook his head with a tired smile. Seems like you really are the Lord's daughters. You have his strategic mind, while Shiro has his combat prowess. Not only that, it seems like your spells are also similar to his. He too would don armor crafted from his celestial energy and fight off his opponent, he said with a nostalgic look in his eyes. Upon hearing the mention of their lord, the other guards seemed to also remember their previous master and couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. In that case, then how do you feel about getting revenge? I know that revenge isn't always the answer, but right now, I think this is a good payback. So are you going to help me piss off this giant so that he can crush the other families? Kuromi said with a smile. Looking up at Kuromi, Philip nodded his head with determination. Since you have proven to be combat ready, despite a few shortcomings with your usage of celestial energy, I shall listen to your every command without question. I only have one request, and that is regardless of what happens to us. Make sure you and the second young miss survive at all cost. I don't want the Lord's bloodline to be cut off. Of course, I don't plan on dying anytime soon. Kuromi grinned. Amen. Here is the manual for the spell that the Lord had created. I might as well give it to you now. Philip smiled and handed her a book. Callie, are you able to carry me on your back? I'll study the manual while we search for the giant. Kuromi asked while receiving the manual. That way, she could try to at least help some more in terms of combat prowess. Of course, first young miss, it'll be my pleasure. Callie nodded as she crouched down and offered her back to Kuromi. Climbing onto Callie's back, Kuromi started to flip through the manual while everyone split up in order to find the giant. As this was happening, Shiro was rapidly closing in on the dragon's location. However, there was a slight problem. With me being able to use celestial raiment once more, it means that my location can be discovered through sensing the energy that I passively emit in this form. To actually succeed in attacking the dragon in the ass, I'll need to fire my spear without warning him. The best choice is to attack him from afar, but there is still travel time to think about. Shiro frowned. Flying through the air, she glanced around her and soon found the cave that the dragon was supposed to be in. Hovering in the air, she started to formulate some plans on how she could make this possible. With Kuro around, I have been relying on her for most of the planning, but seems like I'll have to take things seriously so that I can pierce the rear. Problem 1, detection. With my current form, getting close would be dangerous and could put the dragon on guard. To be honest, it might have already detected me. Problem 2, it'll be hard for my attack to hit if I'm far away, but if I'm close, I'll be detected. She thought with a frown. Closing her eyes, she made a note of all the abilities that she could access right now with her celestial raiment. Running a few simulations, she started to formulate a few ways to actually attack the dragon. Looking at Shiro, who was hovering in the air, the guards tilted their heads in confusion. Is she okay? One of the guards asked hesitantly. I'm sure she's just thinking of something right now. Another guard replied. After waiting for a few moments, Shiro opened her eyes as she had a smile on her face. Jumping down, she landed in front of the guards. Do you know where the ass of the dragon is located? Shiro asked as her question took the guards by surprise. I do. Why do you ask, second young miss? The guard replied with confusion written all over his face. Great. Okay, Aki, I'm going to make an orb in a second. I want you to grab that orb and place it near the ass. Once you do that, you will run as far as you can or else you'll be killed, okay? Ah, understood, young miss. Aki nodded his head. Seeing that he had agreed, Shiro smiled and told them to step back. Full. Breathing out heavily, Shiro closed her eyes and changed the armor attunement from apocalyptic lightning to rift shadow. Asterisk Kish. The moment she changed the attunement, the ground beneath her seemed to split apart to reveal a black and purple void that was filled with nothing. Only an infinite darkness could be seen as mist slowly crawled up Shiro's body and enveloped her in a cocoon of black mist. After a short moment, the mist exploded apart to reveal Shiro in her new armor. Her hair was colored black much like Kuromi, while the armor had no definitive form. It was creepy in a way since the shadow writhed around on her body. In a way, it behaved like a flame, flickering to where the wind would blow. Looking down on her hand that was covered with this shadow, Shiro narrowed her eyes and snapped her finger. An orb filled with a swirl of black and purple was created just above her fingertips as she flicked it towards Aki. This is the orb. Remember, all you need to do is place it near the ass and just run without looking back. Shiro instructed emotionlessly. Seeing this change in aura, Aki gulped and nodded his head. You guys and girls, go make some checkpoints along the way from here to Tiryu, so that I can lead the dragon to the city without going the wrong way. Understood. Watching the guards disperse, Shiro looked around and started to fly towards a distant mountain. Sitting down on the edge of a cliff, she closed one of her eyes and looked at what the orb could see. Right now, Aki had already entered the cave and was currently making his way through the tunnels quietly. As she was observing his actions, she could sense that a beast of sorts had entered the area around her as she flicked her hand without hesitation. A void opened up under the beast as a jaw erupted out from the darkness. Before it could even scream for help, the jaw snapped shut and dragged it into the void, leaving only some fur on the ground. Waste of my time, Shiro thought with a frown before returning her focus back on the orb. In front of the orb, she could see the same dragon that had fought the giant a while ago. Previously, she was quite far away, so she couldn't get a full sense of its size, but now that she's right in front of it, she could tell that it was absolutely massive. Narrowing her eye, Shiro estimated that a single scale was around 2 to 3 times that of her height. Watching Aki carefully place the orb down near the rear before quickly running away without making too much sound, she grinned and made a second orb. Changing back into her lightning armor, she raised her hand into the sky and channeled her energy through her body. Asterisk KRRRR. Heavy rumbles could be heard as the sky darkened. With a single twist of her hand, the clouds parted to reveal a red and yellow lightning spear that pulsed with murderous intent. Watching the spear flicker with lightning, Shiro did some mental calculations on how long it would take for Aki to get out of the cave. While she was waiting, she observed the dragon through her orb in order to make sure that it wasn't woken up by her spell. Thankfully, it seemed to be in quite a deep slumber, so she didn't need to be worried. With their distance, she could charge it up more and still be in the clear. Of course, she wasn't going to do that since she only had a limited amount of energy to work with. Currently, after making the spear, she had around 35% of her energy left, which should be enough for her to run away at full speed. Waiting patiently so that Aki had enough time to at least get out of the cave, Shiro narrowed her eyes and threw the orb into the sky. Snapping her finger, the orb started to unwrap itself and revealed a magic circle that flickered with a purple light. Right then, hopefully, my calculations are correct and my portal should work. If it works, the spear would be instantly transported to where the dragon is and pierce its ass. Shiro thought to herself. Narrowing her eyes at the lightning spear, she took a deep breath and started to rotate the giant construct. Watching the spear essentially transformed into a giant bullet, Shiro grinned and slammed her hand downwards. Following her gesture, spear started to fall. Thunder crackled loudly as the magic circle activated and the portal was connected. Good morning, Shiro shouted out with a grin. Asterisk bang. Suddenly feeling a surge of celestial energy nearby, the dragon opened his eyes slowly and looked around in confusion. Feeling danger overwhelm his senses, the dragon snarled for a moment before standing up with his guard up. However, just as he did this, a giant rotating lightning spear exited out of the portal and shot up the only vulnerable part of his body at this moment. Widening his eyes at the sudden impact, the dragon reared its head back and opened its jaws. Yura. Hearing the painful scream of the dragon, Shiro giggled in excitement and flew into the air. Boom. Right after the scream, a pillar of hell fire exploded into the sky as the mountain, where the dragon was resting in, was disintegrated in an instant. Crack. Bang. Pushing some of the leftover debris away, a pair of crimson wings pushed past the dust and fire. Suppressing her giggle, Shiro made a second lightning spear, only this time. It was smaller in size so that it didn't drain much of her energy. Yo, dragon, did you like the wake-up call? Shiro shouted out as she could feel a pair of enraged eyes glare at her. Before she could speak another sentence, her vision was instantly filled with red as the dragon had tried to kill her with a dragon breath. Slamming her lightning spear into the breath, she used the slight delay to fly into the sky. Is that the best you can do? If someone poked me in the butt, I would try harder to kill them, you know. Shiro laughed. Yura. Flapping its giant wings, the dragon lifted its body out of the destroyed cave. Whistle. Seems like you. Holy sh*t. Crying out in surprise, Shiro was shocked that a meteor had been formed directly above her. Quickly navigating out of the way, she narrowly dodged the meteor and watched as the rock smashed into the ground, causing a rather big crater to be formed. Okay, enough playing around now. I need to take things seriously, Shiro muttered and activated her Rift Shadow armor. Glancing back at the dragon, Shiro saw that he had his sights firmly locked onto her and nodded with satisfaction. Time to start one of the world's most dangerous games of cat and mouse. She thought to herself and increased her speed with the help of the rift. Naturally, she made sure that she didn't go too far, or else the dragon might lose sight of where she was. ####. Tam. Yeah. What do you think the second young miss did to piss off the dragon this much? Tam asked as he looked at the calamity that was following behind Shiro. Do you think the flickers of lightning under the dragon's tail explains what she had done? She did make a huge lightning spear, but surely she wouldn't be that cruel, right? Plus, if she did that, I'm pretty sure that the dragon will literally go after her until this grudge is solved. Did you forget that she asked Aki to set the orb near the dragon's ass? The other guard sighed. I suppose she did do what first young miss instructed her to do. I'll admit, though, if I was in her place right now, I'll be killed in an instant. No ***T. There's meteors, fire breaths, fire pillars, flare waves, and even the occasional explosion in the area around her. We'll probably die the moment we get near her due to collateral damage, so the best thing we can do now is make sure that everyone survives. Amen. Let's go get Aki first. While this was all happening, the sight of an Armageddon did not escape the Tiryu guards' notice as they quickly sounded the alarm for a max-level emergency. Hearing the alarm, the families quickly gathered and saw the rapidly closing dragon in the distance and couldn't help but worry. Seeing that the dragon is literally using all of its spells without restraint, they knew that it was clearly enraged, so the only thing they can do right now is to attack it until it almost dies and retreat. The option of killing it is also available, but that would be much harder since the moment the dragon deems survival impossible, it would try to take down as many things as it can before it dies. Should the dragon choose to self-destruct, the entire city of Tiryu will be flattened in an instant. Quickly coming to an agreement on what they should do, they dispatched all of their most powerful soldiers in order to face this dragon in Tiryu Forest before it can cause the city any harm. ###. I can see the city now, Shiro thought while narrowing her eyes. Dodging another fire breath, she kept her eyes towards the city and saw that they had deployed guards to stop the dragon from advancing. TCH, I can't attack them or bring the dragon any closer since I don't have the energy for that. But if anything, I suppose the only thing left for me to do is to poke the hornet's nest more, I guess. Shiro thought to herself. Turning around in the air, she created another lightning spear along with 3 portals. 2 to attack and 1 to escape. Throwing the spear into the portal, she tried to poke it once more, but the spear was knocked aside by the tail. But despite her failed attempt, the dragon seemed to go from angry to ***T insane since the girl in front of her had tried the same thing twice. Well, my job is done. My supports shall deal with you. Shiro shouted out as her armor lost its luster as her stored energy depleted. Falling into the third portal that she had created, she quickly left the area before she could be hit by a meteor. Seeing that its target suddenly disappeared, the dragon roared out in anger as it glared towards the incoming support that its target had mentioned. Since they're the support, if I kill them, she should appear again, he thought in anger. However, had he not been poked twice and had been angered beyond repair, he would have realized that he was being led by the nose. Unfortunately, being poked twice doesn't exactly allow one to think straight. ####. URG. Rolling across the ground after falling through the portal, Shiro quickly flipped herself back on her feet and saw that she was back at the cave where she had poked the dragon. Sighing in relief, she made her way out of the charred crater where a mountain should be. Just as she made her way out of the crater, she felt the ground shake slightly as if it was experiencing an earthquake. Shaking her head, she dismissed it as the dragon wreaking havoc in the distance and ignored it. Looking up, she was about to go about her merry way when her eyes widened with shock. Running towards her direction as if he was an Olympic sprinter, the giant was running towards where the dragon is with anger in his eyes, and it just so happened that Shiro was between him and the dragon. *CK.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.